Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we discuss important issues facing our nation through the lens of racial equality. Today, we have a special guest, Dr. Rasean Crawley, who is running for Metro Council in the state of Kentucky. Let me tell you guys a little bit about Dr. Crawley. Dr. Crawley is a dedicated and passionate individual committed to making a positive impact on our community. With a proven track record of community involvement, mentor development, and deep understanding of the issues facing our city, he is the ideal candidate to represent our community on the Metro Council for the 22nd District. Born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, Dr. Crawley has a strong connection to our community and a firsthand understanding of its unique challenges and opportunities. He holds a Bachelor's of Science degree from the University of Louisville, a Master of Business Administration degree from Florida Institute of Technology, and a doctorate in Business Administration from Trident University International, equipping him with the knowledge and skills needed to address the complex issues facing our city. In his professional experience, with over 10 years of experience in account management and business development, Dr. Crawley has a proven track record of managing annual budgets in excess of $50 million, managing relationships for a number of Fortune 100 clients, and partnering with different vertical leaders to provide solutions to challenging tasks. He currently leads the account management team at Humana Centerwell Pharmacy, where he demonstrates effective leadership, strategic thinking, and a commitment to community betterment. Dr. Crawley is deeply committed to community service and has been actively involved in various initiatives. He currently volunteers with Louisville Kappa League and Junior Kappa League, serving as an advisor to JCPS students, providing mentorship to young men from grades 5 to 12, demonstrating a hands-on approach to creating positive change. Dr. Crawley also serves as an active board member for Friends of the Louisville Zoo, FOZ, a philanthropic board that raises funds to preserve, promote, and advance the mission of the Louisville Zoo. Dr. Crawley is also an active member of Burnett Avenue Baptist Church. This commitment reflects his selfless and genuine passion for improving the lives of our residents and community. If elected to the Metro Council, Dr. Crawley has outlined several key priorities, including educational enhancements, public safety reinforcement, and substantial development, to name a few. He believes in representing the voice of the community, eradicating fiscal irresponsibility, and ensuring government transparency, and is dedicated to working collaboratively with other council members to implement effective policies for the benefit of our community. Dr. Crawley envisions a future where our community thrives with a focus on infrastructure revitalization, promotion of health and wellness, and a stronger district. He is committed to fostering an inclusive and sustainable city that prioritizes the well-being of all residents. With a combination of experience, dedication, and a genuine love for our community, Dr. Crawley is the right choice for Metro Council. He looks forward to the opportunity to serve and represent the interests of our residents, working tirelessly to build a better future for Metro Louisville. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Dr. Crawley.
Mr. King.
Hey, thank you for being on, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So, is there anything else you'd like to add to that wonderful bio? Man,
No,
I mean, you're doing a whole lot.
I think you covered it all. I'm just a public servant. Really at the end of the day, I want to make sure, as I mentioned, that I'm a voice for not only the district that I'm running for in Louisville for District 22, but also Louisville Metro as a whole. I think that I'm in a unique transition phase right now where Louisville is expanding and growing. Um, and just want to make sure that we are not behind the eight ball on that. So making sure that one, we have young-minded individuals, professionals. Let me make sure I put that out there that are serving the interests of the public, that we are not going backwards at all, and we're moving forward, and that we are that we can actually be a city that everyone looks up to or looks at for how they should act and move forward as well. So, but you covered everything else in there, brother. Appreciate it.
Oh, that is not a problem. So at first hand, tell us what would be your actual first business, as the council person.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. So the first area of business, one is establishing a relationship with the other council members. And the reason I say that that's going to be initial and important is because without relationships, strong relationships, regardless of the party that I represent, without that, then I won't be effective at all. And the reason I say this is because I will be representing a vast majority of residents that live in District 22. And I like to actually say that District 22 is an example of the melting pot of Louisville. Every diverse background, religious affiliation, creed, color, sexual affiliation, orientation, whatever, is all in my district. And I want to make sure that I am that voice that represents everyone. We don't have to always agree, but we should come to a consensus or understanding that's for the betterment of the community. So that'll be the first action internally, will be to build the relationships and understand the process itself. I've done some work already in trying to learn that. I've met with some council people already just specifically for council work. And just want to make sure that we are tackling that. I would say externally, one of it is going to be public safety. It's nothing new that Louisville has been under scrutiny in recent years for the level of violence and the type of segregation, if you want to say, that has occurred within our city. I mean, that's nothing that is secret or quiet kept. But I want to make sure that we are working with local law enforcement to ensure that, one, we have an equitable way that we are addressing issues. One, that our officers and our residents are educated on policies, processes that affect them directly, and then try to forge that bridge. And how do we build a stronger community so that, one, we can leverage our first responders, but then also they can leverage us as well. So internal and external.
Wow. I mean, that sounds really good, but let me ask you this. I mean, do you have concerns when it comes to law enforcement and your community?
I would say so. A few years back, we had an unfortunate incident with Breonna Taylor losing her life at the hands of law enforcement. And after everything that has come out about that, there are some questionable methods that Louisville Metro Police or tactics that they were doing at that time. I would say with the new chief that we do have in place, with the leadership from the majors for each precinct, and I've met the major that represents my precinct, and we've had a very in-depth discussion. I would say that the way media exposes it, one bad apple ruins the whole bunch, right? I have friends that are police officers. I have family members that's been in law enforcement, right? So I have a kind of a different viewpoint on that. But I would say in general, there are still areas that I would say our police force can learn how to change some, maybe the antiquated processes that are there. But I think that there have been a lot of strides moving forward where they have made the investment, because I'm seeing them more out in the community trying to partner with them versus being a threat. But it's not one of those items that we can address overnight. It's going to take time. And it's not going to be done this year or probably even next year. But I think the more and more that we focus on that and we shine the spotlight on the positive things that the community is doing, but also the Metro Police are doing, I think that will start bridging that gap of the hatred that might have, the confusion, potential negative perceptions. But I think that will bridge that gap to formulate a more stronger and diverse community across the board.
Okay, I like that.
Thank
I
you.
like that. You know, bridging the gap is the thing that's very, very important. And I
Absolutely.
know that there's always going to be some mistrust because, as you say, there is always going to be an apple or two that's going to try and spoil the whole
Absolutely.
bunch. And
Absolutely.
so, just I think, just in working across the lines and actually bringing that together, and making the community feel safe. I think
Absolutely.
that's a good task for you to take on firsthand because I'm sure that the lingering effects of the Breonna Taylor situation is probably going to it's going to last for a long
Oh
time,
yeah.
and
Absolutely.
so it's going to take a
Absolutely.
lot to fix that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, and one other thing, just to put it out there, when I host um, my regular community meetings or district meetings, the plan is to have a member of Metro Police, a member of fire and safety, the first responders, members of the neighborhoods to be at these meetings to represent and be a voice and a face that someone can remember and recognize and know that, okay, you're not a threat, or hold them accountable as well. Because the one thing that I will say after meeting with Metro Police, um, some of them, they want us to hold them accountable, but at the same time there's a balancing act in how we do that and we still stay law-abiding citizens, right? So
Right.
that's a whole nother conversation for another day. But that's what one of my main plan is to do, is to have all of the entities that make up the community, not just of Louisville, but specifically District 22. I want to make sure that they are represented, or they have an open, path into these district meetings that we have.
Okay. So, can you tell us about your background and what motivated you to run for public office?
Absolutely. So, this is not my first time running. I actually ran back in 2016. I was living in a different district at the time, and so I was running against the current councilwoman, who has been there since the merge, right? So, was able to really sit back after not winning that election. I was able to sit back and just witness what she's done, and how she has positively affected the community that I did live in, and take a few pointers from her. So that was one thing. So I took a step back and said, you know what, let me just relax, get myself together and think about it. And I would say this time around, I was actually asked to run. I wasn't thinking about running this election season. I was actually thinking about giving it one more cycle before I ran. However, my current councilman is retiring this year, right? So it's an open seat. When you look at the demographics of the district itself, the redistricting, the Democrats have the majority. Now, I'm not going to say that just by them we can win, but they do have the majority, and the influence that I can have on hopefully the other side, into switching some of those votes over. But really, what came down to it is I'm looking at Louisville. It's my second tour back in Louisville. I'm born and raised. I left for 4 years, came back, and I actually love my city. Even through the negative heat that we get sometimes, I still love my city. This is home. So I wanted to make sure that I was able to be a public servant and actually positively impact Louisville and help to push it forward. I can't do it by myself by any means, but I think, if I want to be that beacon of light or that beacon of change, then I need to be that voice. So I took it upon myself to, do some soul searching, prayed about it, of course, before I even said yes. And then, the way everything is unfolding now, is looking favorable. So we're just gonna, keep praying, keep steadfast on the knees, fasting, and just making sure that that at the end of the day, God gets the glory out of anything that I do. But I want to make sure that I am doing it with Him guiding me. But also from there, I want to make sure that people can see God through me, and that this is not a career, or this is not for money by any means. This is literally, I want to give back to the community that has given so much to me.
So tell us, what does this campaign mean to you?
Well, that's a good question. I would say we are in a pivotal point in Louisville. Right now, there's some legislation that's out at the state level that's making Louisville nonpartisan, and it has passed. There's some legislation out around our public school system, because we do have the largest public school system in the state of Kentucky. And so what it means to me is, like I said, it's that pivotal change and ensure that we are on the right path moving forward, and that we're not moving backwards. There's a lot of heat right now, just, and a lot of focus on Louisville. So um, just want to make sure that we're moving it forward, and that's really the gist of it. I mean, I can go into more depth, but really high level, it's moving us forward in the right direction and not going backwards.
Okay. What specific policies do you propose to improve the lives of marginalized communities in Kentucky?
Oh, that's a great one. One, I would say looking at more laws that are more equitable, in nature. What we have seen is in our West Louisville neighborhood, right? They have been underserved for so long. I mean, people consider parts of it as a food desert. At one time, there, the closest hospital was, about 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15 minutes away. Now, the city has invested in West Louisville. We now have a hospital that is being built specifically for West Louisville that should be opening towards the end of this year. We have other community resources that are available that are coming to pass. And I would say making sure that we do not forget those that are in marginalized areas, right? Because where we see some of the spending, some of the growth, some of the investments going are in areas that, let's be honest, that the average income is on the higher scale, right? We see it on where a lot of our marginalized residents, they don't have the services, the resources, the help. And sometimes they want the help, but the help is not there readily available, or if it is available, it's minimized because of funding. So I want to make sure that we are being equitable in any ordinance, law that we come up with or that we pass through. I want to make sure that we're being equitable in resources and that we're sharing that wealth. I will say this: the one thing that the mayor of Louisville said last year in one of his speeches about affordable housing is that it's not in my district. But what he was saying is that every district needs to share that wealth, right? I mean, I get it, affordable housing. I think the stigma around there is that it causes problems, or there's negative realizations around that. But if you actually bring back, peel back the layer and actually see, it's not as bad as people make it out to be, or that the media makes it out to be. I think part of it is lack of education for some residents as they are in transition from, affordable housing to being able to own their own house, or even giving them the resources once again and the training and what does that look like. So making sure once again that we're being fair across the board, that people have access to the same resources, and really just making sure that our laws make sense.
Okay. So then tell I think we started out into this, but we didn't actually, I guess this question will actually go all the way through with this. And that is, how do you plan to bridge the gap between different communities within the Metro Council district?
That's a great question. That's a great question. One is going to be the relationship with that council representative. That's the first thing. So that's the reason I said the first thing is relationship, building that, and trying to forge those. I will also say that that a lot of the communities, um, some of the resources overlap, but I think we can do a better job in actually being intentional about partnering with communities and doing certain things, right? So as far as district, District 22 is on the outskirts of the metropolitan or the inner city, right? So we have an expressway that circles, and that's kind of where that divide of the city county lines are. So we're in the county area. And like District 2 is within the county area, or I'm sorry, like District 1 is within the county area. So what we want to do is make sure that we're bridging those gaps and partnering. Like, why can't we have, a day where District 1 partners with, District 22 or 26 or just different districts to one, build that melting pot that I was talking about that's already here in District 22 that I would serve, but also being able to share those ideas and seeing what is different, what is the same, and how we can just build a better community overall. So that's one thing I would say is just really partnering with the council members to figure out how can we either leverage resources or how can we just let's come together and just do something, right? That's one thing. I think the other thing is that is also getting the community engaged to want to do that. Because as much as we can propose as council people that we want to do X, Y, Z, and we want to put certain events on, if the community is not behind it, then it makes it that much more challenging to bridge those gaps or to do crossover or any events that share. So making sure that that we are doing that. And I would say the third thing is making sure that any extracurricular events, such as like Top Golf, right? That's in one district. Don't monopolize the entertainment opportunities to one district. Spread it out, so therefore people want to go to Top Golf, which is in our St. Matthews area, Oxmoor area. They might want to go down to some of the breweries that are in downtown Louisville, right? So it just gives them that option, that opportunity to explore outside and give them the interest of doing that. So I would say those are those three things with the council, getting the community behind it, and then of course, people want to be entertained. So we want to make sure that we keep that going.
Follow up on that.
Yes.
Would this be like pooling resources, for the benefit of all, or is there something that's preventing, like, let's say, Top Golf from coming to District 22 along with other entertainment that you guys can have in that sector that people don't have to travel so far?
Right. I think your first answer, your first response kind of to that question is what it is. It's the pooling of resources. So I will say this, I have been at some of the council meetings, I've watched them virtually, and there is a camaraderie that's already there in sharing resources and, helping to say, hey, we want to put on this event. Can the other districts support by, sharing this amount of money or whatever you can do, right? And a lot of times the districts will, do that. And the promoting of that to the other districts so they can benefit as well. When we're looking at specific like entertainment space like Top Golf, a few things go into play with that. It's going to be one, can they put it in District 22 with the current zoning, right? If not, how do we go about changing those zonings so that it can be commercial and it can hold that? And then you got to look into if you're selling alcohol, and so there's multiple areas you have to look into when you're looking at where to place an event, like let's say a Top Golf or a Putt Shack or a movie theater or something like that. But it's not out of the question, right? Because if we can do it in one place, I'm pretty sure with the proper support, we can do it in other places as well. It's just, once again, getting the community to rally behind that, but also getting leadership, government leaderships to understand we don't need to monopolize that in specific areas to make it difficult for those that might be, once again, marginalized, and let's say that they use public transportation. Now they're paying a lot more to get to that location. It's going to take a lot longer than if we were to have something centrally located, or where everyone can get to in a matter of minutes. So yeah, but I think the pooling of resources, and really, that's if the community wants it as well. So yeah.
Okay. Well, to move on here to this next question here, I think this right here is going to tell the people why you are that representative that they need to vote for.
Okay.
What experiences in your life have prepared you for the responsibilities of being a public servant?
That's a good question. One of it is the community involvement that I have right now. I'm very passionate about our mentoring that we do with Kappa Alpha Psi. So I am a member of the greatest fraternity to ever be known to man. That's the Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. And with our so under the Guide Right umbrella, has the Kappa League. So Kappa League and Junior Kappa League, and that's where I spend most of my time. And when I say most of my time, it's all volunteer work, so there's no payment for it. There is a passion around it, and and we do it 2 Saturdays out of every month during the school year. So with that, we're pouring into young African American men to one, show them a positive light, but also to help them to mature and grow, and then move on and be the best individual and contributor that they can be to their community wherever they might land. um, so that's one thing. One, I'm heavily involved in my church. I make sure that, one, I'm there, but I make sure that that I'm available as needed. I think with public servant is the selflessness that goes into it. And I've been that person. That's my demeanor. Naturally, it's not something that I have to work and then I have to think about and I'm tired afterwards. That's just what I do. I feel that giving back to people is the least that I can do, and being that positive role model. Part of it is I ran for election in high school. I've served in many different um, offices within my fraternity. I'm also president-elect for Louisville NPHC, or the National Panhellenic Council here for Louisville. So being able to ensure that I am giving back selflessly, that's what makes me the proper candidate. I'm not doing this for money. I'm not doing this to become popular. I'm not doing this as a lifelong career that some politicians find themselves doing. I do it because I really believe in the mission and believe that this is my time and my season to go forth. And I'm the one. I believe in term limits. So I after 2 terms, if the community wants me to stay in, I wouldn't mind doing that. But at the same time, I think once you're in for so long, and I haven't really said, like, or found out what that length is, but once you're in for so long, um, you're no longer as useful as someone else with a new, fresh mind, fresh ideas could possibly be. So I just want to put that out there as well, that this is not something that I'm looking at lifelong, but if it is something, like I said, that God has a plan and this is where it leads to, and the constituents that I support want me to, then of course I will do it. But I think that's the reason being, because it comes back to just the selflessness of of who I am. And then being the voice, right? We have a lot of people that in the community, and in Louisville, that their voice is not heard, or their voice is minimized because of the color of their skin, or because of their beliefs, or because of they might be on bad times and homeless. We need to make sure that we're taking care of everybody, and not just a select few that we deem need that support or need that representation.
So, let me I have a follow-up question to that, because you said a lot of good things there. And so I just want to break this down.
Okay.
So, first question is, first follow up is, so what is it that's in your heart that makes you do this mentorship program? What is it that you see that makes you want to do do that program?
You know what? At first, it was kind of the rites of passage that I was like, you know what? How do I quickly get involved in my fraternity? Because I'm not going to just join and not do anything. Um, so that was really the initial. Is just let me do something. Well, the more and more that I've seen them grow over the past few years, it's been amazing. And what I mean by that is, let's just take 4 years ago, we probably had about, I think, maybe 60, young men that were in the program. The year afterwards, I think we ended up going up to like 75. The year after that, we had 100, and we had to cap it because it was a wait list. And this year, the same thing. We had to reduce it because we brought on Junior Kappa League, and that was even over the amount that we originally planned for. The reason I say all of that is because seeing these young men, seeing what they're capable of doing, seeing how they actually benefit from what the brothers of Kappa Alpha Psi, what we pour into them, it makes it worth the while. It's crazy that I put myself back in their shoes when I was that age, and we had something at church that was called rites of passage. And so seeing those men pour into us as young men, they held us accountable, but they taught us life lessons that only a man could teach another man, right? Or teach a young man that's growing. Um, I want to make sure that I am paying that forward because I benefited from it, and here I am, an example of a stand-up person. And I say that because I've been told that, so it's not being cocky. It's the confidence that I've seen it, and I know what I was, when I was younger to where I am now. But being able to pour into them and seeing how they actually come up to me afterwards and ask certain questions. Seeing how educated and how far along they are, it's amazing. And I would just say this: 2 weeks ago, myself as well as another fraternal brother, actually, I'm our vice Polemark. He's running for a state representative role. We were panels for the Kappa Leaguers where they could ask us questions about, politics, like what does that mean? The questions that they asked, the way that they formulated the thought to even come up with these questions surprised me even more than adults that are my age or older, that you're like, well, you've been here before. So that just gave me much more. I'm serious, but that gave me so much joy seeing that. And then they didn't want it to end because we were done. We had to limit it. That afterwards, they're staying back and their parents are outside waiting for them to come out. And they're still talking about, well, how can we do this? Well, you know what? How can we help? Can we help on your campaign? Or what do you think about this? And how can we have a voice, even though we're 18 and under? How can we? And it's just beautiful seeing how, coming from the beginning of the school year, how new people that kind of standoffish, to see this collectiveness of young men that are there for a common purpose and that they are engaged, and you can see the fruits of your labor being birthed in them. That's what keeps me going. I mean, like I said, there's no money in the world that will compare to the joy, happiness, all of those adjectives that I get when I am with this program. I mean, it's funny because after this call, we have an advisor meeting I'm going to for the program. So, it just gets me excited.
So that second follow-up question is, you mentioned term limits,
Hmm.
you know, and so I understand when you mention term limits and so forth, but for you, when you're in office, knowing that you're going to be the inspiration and the image of change, how long do you think you should actually run this office?
So that's going to come with a few things. One, and trust me, I'll get to that answer. One is going to be the support of my constituents, right? If they don't want me in, they're going to vote me out. They can, right? They have that they have that right to exercise to vote. But I would say if everything goes as planned, or as I'm kind of picturing it as it lays out, I would say no more than about 4 term limits. And the reason I say that, because the first term limit, let's be honest, I'm learning my way. I'm going to be learning, okay, how does the council truly work? And that's a 4-year term, and it'll probably take me a little bit of time to get my footing, not because I won't be able to comprehend, but in 2 more years, the odd council numbers will be up for reelection at that time, right? So now dealing with a whole new, depending on how the votes go, dealing with potentially new council member cohorts, right? And being able to, now I got to build those relationships. So I said that's one. The second term limit is for me to actually say, you know what? Here's the things I see after the first one that we need to do differently. These are the laws that we need to go ahead and put on the books. We need to have discussions about. These are laws that we need to maybe change or amend. And then I would say the last 2 term limits is to kind of seeing that progress that I've been able to, definitely, hopefully, impede in the council, see it come to fruition. So it's going to be some time. Nothing happens overnight. So I would say probably no more than 4, but I don't want to limit myself. At the same time, I don't want to limit the ones that want to vote for me either. And then, who knows? It might be state, might be, U.S. after that, but we'll see. We'll see
Well,
how that works.
we will definitely see, because I'm sure that you're going to be there.
Thank you. Thank
Um,
you.
how do you plan to engage with constituents and ensure their voices are heard?
Absolutely. Thank you. One way, as I mentioned, I will have regular district meetings, right? So I will host them within the district, somewhere that's easy to hopefully hold the capacity of that district. Um, Another one would be virtual options. I would say COVID did a number on how we can do things virtually. So it might be an opportunity where to host those virtually, but I want to get out and make sure that I am accessible in the neighborhood. And what I mean by that is, it might be a Saturday that I'll spend 4 hours at the neighborhood grocery store, and people, as they come in, they'll see me, and they can come talk to me. I would have a team that works in office that would definitely be kind of my extension to ensure that concerns are heard, that concerns are dealt with in a timely manner, and that we follow up. I will also say that you know they will have access to me, right? They'll have my office number, they'll have the cell phone number. um they'll have access to me, so that one, we can tackle whatever issues might come along. I mean, I already have some residents that have my number, and they call me already, and they're like, so what do you think about this? I'm like, well, I'm not in office yet, but let's look and see. So that's part of being the public servant and signing up for that role, right? And so that's how we will start it, and then we'll evolve it as needed. We'll change it as things evolve, and we'll change it as we see fit, because maybe we might have to go to a bigger location, or maybe I might have to do more frequent meetings because of just the sheer population size, or just what needs to be addressed. Each district, so just for understanding purposes, and people can visualize it. It's about 25,000 residents that I would support in my district. So that's a lot of people, a lot of them, and one of me, right? So being able to have opportunities for them to come up, and then I'm very approachable. So even if they see me out and I'm having dinner with family or friends, they can always approach me respectfully, right? We want to make sure that let's go ahead and be honest, because I'm still a resident myself, but I want to make sure that they feel comfortable to at least approach me. And if we can't, rectify whatever it is right then and there, of course, I have office hours, I have email, I have phone, I have a legislative assistant, I'm sorry, a legislative aide. I'll have people to help address those. So hopefully that answers the question that you were asking.
Well, yeah, and I will say that that's actually, I think, a very key and important thing to put out in the forefront, is
Hmm.
because as a public servant, and if there is accessibility, especially as you say, from the respectful manner, I think that's the one thing that constituents love to know about their representative and makes them feel much more comfortable. Because if you're accessible, then that means that you guys can chop it up, and you can kind of like, they want to give you some ideas and tell you about some things.
Hmm.
Hey, you can run it by your team, but also at
Absolutely.
the same time, hey, it's kind of like, okay, well, we had this idea, this idea, this idea. This is how we doing it.
I
Yeah,
agree with you.
and
I,
they
I,
will respect
I
that.
agree with you. I definitely agree with you.
So, what are the key challenges you anticipate facing you in your campaign?
I would say key challenges right now. I don't have a primary, which our primary is May 21st, so it's in 2 weeks. I do not have a primary, and I'm not envying those that do. However, the other side of the aisle, they actually do. There are two gentlemen that's running against each other in the Republican primary. So for that, I would say. Um, the district itself has been a Republican voting district since the inception of Metro Council, right? So since 2003, okay? So for 2 decades. So the challenge is going to be to flip it from being a Republican seat to a Democratic seat. That's going to be very challenging because just the sheer nature, we are in Kentucky. Even though Louisville is more liberal than the rest of the state, but we do have pockets within Louisville, the districts that are either more red than they are blue. Some of them are just purple because it's who the best candidate is. So it really comes down to um, making sure that people understand, one, they hear the voice of why I'm running. Two, I would urge people not to go based off name, because I will say the opponent that is having the primary is my state representative currently. And so, he's been in for, I think, 2 decades now. So, there's name recognition that's associated with that. Another part of it is really getting out, which I have been doing already, is getting out, knocking on doors, meeting the residents so they understand who I am before November comes. Because the one thing I don't want them to think is when I'm coming around, they're like, oh, okay, so you just come around in November. No, I'm not that person. If I'm doing this so that, one, you know who I am. Two, you know that I'm going to be there. And three, I represent everyone. So that's where um, that's where I think the most challenging aspect is going to be, and then just making sure, because we are in a presidential election year as well, so being sure that I can separate myself and have people identify with me personally versus a party. The reason I say that is because you're going to have a lot of voters out there that will vote straight party ticket just because that's what they do, right? You will have some that actually will vote based on somebody showing up, right? Well, no one else has showed up, so I'm voting for you. um but I want people to understand that the reason I am running is for them, it's for the residents. It's not for any personal gain or any personal you know yeah, personal gain, I think, is the best way of saying that. I'm not doing it, being to be selfish. Because if all said and done, I could probably live an easier life not running. But
I'm sure your people know that you're not a selfish person, because it seems like you are definitely a community developer slash organizer. And so
yes,
I'm sure
absolutely,
that people are used to seeing you.
absolutely, absolutely, yes, sir.
Can you tell us, how do you plan to work with other council members to achieve your goals? So this is your agenda. How are you going to work with them to
Sure.
help that to get out?
Well, you know what? Just like anything else, there's negotiation, right? There's a sense of um, it's give and take. That's in, excuse me, relationships, right? Compromise. So the same thing works there. If I have a specific agenda that I want to, get out and make sure um, that it moves through the proper committees, it gets out of committee, it gets to the general floor, and then it passes. It's going to have to be conversation. One thing that I'm learning just in life is not to blindside anyone. So I shouldn't be. So the first time that the council's hearing about something that is my agenda, and I'll just use your words that I'm like, hey, this is what I want to do. That shouldn't be the first time that they're hearing about it. We should have already had discussions, and I'm the type of person I like to play chess. Versus checkers at times. So what that means is, I'm gonna know, I have a good idea where we stand on my agenda items before it's even public. And the reason for that is because I know that in the future I'm gonna have to, support the other side. But it's relative to what's going on, right? I can't support, and let's say I can't support a ban on homelessness or criminalizing, the homeless, for you to support me having a new grocery store built in my, district. That won't happen. But I will have those conversations and say, okay, how can I support you? What does it look like? And so I have a better understanding of what is coming across, and then I can help and support them just as they will support me. So it really comes down to the compromise, communication, really, and relationship. As long as you build the relationship, a strong foundation, I think you can have a lot of goodness that comes out of that. And, they might actually give me some ideas that I didn't even think about that would make my agenda item that much more better. So, yeah.
Okay. Now this one, I'm sure that all of your constituents are going to be listening to this question. So when
Okay.
you look into this camera, you make sure they understand.
Okay.
What are your top three priorities of your agenda when you are elected?
Absolutely. So, one of the first ones is going to be um, public safety. Um, we want to make sure with the crime rate and just what's going on. I want to make sure that one, any new laws that we bring out that deal with the public, when it deals with safety, LMPD, that we are doing it in the equitable manner, the best way possible. That's the first thing. The second thing is going to be sustainable development. The reason for that is because we want to grow, right? Anyone truly wants to grow. Seeing growth, it shows that there's vibrant life going on, right? It shows growth is a sign that you're moving in a positive direction. You're attracting the best of the best. And then the third thing is going to be, I would say, a livable wage. I want to make sure that people understand that for you to survive, you have to have a livable wage. But the caveat to that, that I think a lot of people omit or that they don't necessarily look at from an economic standpoint is that we want to make it a livable wage, but we also need to have a bill of rights for employees. And the reason I say that is because if we say the minimum wage is going to be $22 here or $30, well, now you have employers, and their top goal is to make a profit. They're going to figure out a way. How do I either do more part-time employees versus full-time? How do I cut benefits? And we just want to make sure that as we're doing these things, that we're taking the entire picture into account and not just looking at one thing that's like, okay, well, yeah, we're making, $30 an hour minimum in Louisville. So yeah, that's the place to go, but not seeing that, well, with that $30 an hour, your home that used to be $75,000 is now $250,000. So you still can't afford it, right? So we got to make sure that there's a balance there. So that's why I say a livable wage, but with the caveat of of like a employee bill of rights or employee rights, just so that that's handled.
Oh boy. I mean, that was like a whole lot, but now I got a follow up for you on this, and so make sure that we're clarified.
Okay,
Is that so first let me just give you this scenario. Do you remember when the Affordable Health Care Act was first passed?
I do.
Okay. So when it was first passed, and those on the conservative side hated that idea, and they tried to avoid healthcare in the worst way for different states, employees, counties, whatever have you. They refused to have all these people being covered with healthcare.
Hmm.
And so what they did is they decided that they would take full time from 40 hours down to 30, 35 hours.
Hmm.
Okay. So this is to circumvent the law, which forced the federal government to change the regulations, 29 CFR, which is for when it comes to federal regulations, when it comes to labor law. Just make sure
Hmm.
you keep that as one of your references. And so when they did that, okay, that actually turned into a lot of people being laid off.
Exactly.
So we're going to
Exactly.
fast forward to this point when we're talking about the livable wage, which has been talked about on the federal level for like the last 5, 6 years, right?
Right.
So with that, they've come up with things that they're trying to put in place right now to
Hmm.
keep livable wages actually from rising, but they're having issues. So my question to you is the major corporations or companies, not only that are in your district but within the state, are you going to try to work with them in order to get this legislation passed and to tell them your side as to how you see this could be beneficial to the state as well as your district?
Absolutely. You have to, right? I mean, I would have to. You can't enact a law or put something on the books and then expect um, someone not to find a loophole in that, right? So it's going to have to be, excuse me, it's going to have to be a true um, conversation with the industries, and what that looks like. That's why I also said that the employee bill of rights, I think, will be a good addition, so that it kind of can minimize companies trying to find loopholes, right? I am not saying that companies should not be profitable. I am not saying that whatsoever, because as having my own LLC, right? It's you that's the whole purpose of going into business. But at the same time, is we need to figure out a way that we can still be profitable and be able to still take care of our people so that they can survive. Because with the changes of things going overseas, and the changes with AI technology, and with the changes of so much that's coming in, it's threatening the human element for working. Right now, there are some things that you would never be able to replace a human for, but some of your entry level, your easier tasks, they're trying to leverage AI for that. By the way, leverage technology. That's why we created. That's why it's here. But making sure that as we're working with these organizations, right? Because we have, Young Brands is here, Humana is here, Ford is here. There's probably, I mean, there's a lot more that I'm not naming that's headquartered here, even in Louisville, that that we would need to definitely have a true conversation, a heart to heart, around what does that really look like, and how can it be a win-win, right? It might be, well, we can go back up to 40 hours of work week, here, but maybe the rate might be 10% lower than what it would be if it's at 30, right? And just kind of weigh that out, that balance. Or maybe if employers are willing to pay for the full insurance and then, affect wages that way. I mean, there's unique ways that we can do it, but I think we have to get creative out of the box. But really, it just comes to we need to have a conversation. We all need to come to a meeting point and just have a conversation and talk it through, because there are things I'm not an expert in that field, but there are things I'm pretty sure that maybe I'm not thinking of that somebody else probably watch this is like, oh, no, 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 you can't do that, because if you do that, I get it. So let's have a discussion and let's talk it out and see where we land with that.
So, how will you ensure transparency and accountability in your role as Metro Council member?
Absolutely. So one thing is everything that we do is recorded on Metro Council. So people will have access to those recordings. That's one. Two, you're going to have the interactions that I'll send out. So there'll be communication via email. There might be a phone tree. I will leverage technology in my favor to get the word out. I will try to let my district know about things that are coming down the pipe, and get their input on it. Not necessarily, as far as to know how I should vote, but maybe get their input, because once again, I do represent the voice of the community. So I want to make sure that as I'm voting, that I am taking all aspects in, and it's not just me voting because of my personal beliefs, and I'm just like, well, no, I'm voting that way because that's it. And then having the community engagement meetings so that they are there, and so it comes down to them having access. That's what it comes down to, them having access.
And so, tell me, how do you plan to address issues of racial inequality in your campaign?
So, I've said it here many a times. On some of it, it needs to be equitable. We need to have the proper representation of our communities. We need to make sure that the voice is there. I am against anything that goes against racial inequality itself. And that's not just for people of color, for blacks, for brown. That's for, our Asians. That's for the Arabic community. There's for, any underserved community. I want to be a voice for them. But also having to realize that we do have allies out there that they recognize because they would never understand the struggle, but that they recognize they recognize where we are, and that inequality that it does exist. As long as we can have that agreement and that conversation, then I think we can address a lot of the racial inequities that we see around our community. And if there are some in the district, we can address those, as well. But it comes down to, once again, a conversation. I cannot assume that my colleagues will know what it's like to be a person of color. I cannot assume that they know what it's like to deal, having to look over my shoulder when I'm out at certain times. I can't assume that. But having those very candid conversation around that and helping them to recognize and possibly, if they can't internalize what that might feel like, then okay, let's talk. But if you are a colleague that's like, oh, you're just, going back 400 years, then we're going to have to approach it in a different light, because it's more than what our ancestors went through and what your ancestors did, right? It's bringing it forward to, this is what is still going on now, and here how, and helping them to understand, here's how the same thing is repeating itself, but in a different, like under a different umbrella or under a different vice, right? So it's having, once again, those conversations.
So, I got a couple of follow ups to that
Go
because I
ahead.
love what you're saying about that. Tell me this. Um, First question: in your district, how has gentrification taken effect in your district?
So I will say this, in my district specifically, when you look at the population, it's a melting pot. So I would say it's more equitable out here. I'm pretty sure there's certain areas that, it's heavily one-sided than others. But I would say, especially in my neighborhood, I see everything. There is everything out here. I cannot look one way down my street of 10 houses and not see something different in every house, right? So that's one thing. I would say I'm actually glad you brought that up because I had a conversation with someone in my district when they were talking about, them moving people out of the affordable homes in West Louisville as they were rebuilding government assisted homes and moving them out or giving them stipends. I said Louisville made a mistake, and where they failed is that they didn't educate. It goes back to the education piece of it. They didn't educate those that was what they were accustomed to. They didn't know what it was to be a homeowner. You didn't teach them that, hey, you're now responsible for XYZ. You're responsible for cutting your own grass. You're responsible for changing your own filter. You're responsible for the upkeep of your property versus you calling somebody and saying, hey. So I think when it comes to the gentrification conversation itself, it's missing the educational piece. Yes, I can give money to you, but if you're not fiscally responsible, right? You don't know how to properly use that. And if you don't give them that tools, then you're replicating a similar situation that they came from, but even worse, because now you're in a community where people expect you to know what you're doing, and then it's a snowball effect. It's a snowball effect. It's just a snowball effect. So I would say in my district specifically, I don't see that the issue of it here, but in other districts, I do see it. Some have been addressed, some are trying to address, and some haven't even begun to address it. Right. So we're at different stages in different districts.
So, how is the homeless situation in your district?
In my district, so we do see homeless, the population, on the off ramps when we do come off. But I would say it's not as bad in my district as it is in other districts by far. I would say once again, I don't feel that we need to criminalize the homeless for being homeless. There's state law out there, I think, on the books right now in session about that here specific. Well, I think it's for Kentucky, but aimed towards Louisville, and it's criminalizing that. But once again, if we don't have resources available to help them, right now, mind you, it's twofold. Homeless, we need them to want to be helped for us to help them. But if we're not putting out there that, hey, you have this resource, you have this access, we can do this. We can do, job, help you with getting jobs. We have a list of employers that will hire you off the street. And, if we don't have that out there readily available, then we're doing a disservice to them. So with that said, we need to make sure that if there are laws we're putting out there, that we have resolutions for those to be proactive so that no one's violating the law. But I think the law itself is just criminal in nature. And I'll leave it at that. But homeless is not as bad out here in my district as it is in the more of the inner city districts.
Okay. So, I'm going to ask this question in a different way because this is a catch all.
Okay.
I want to know, how do you plan to address the issues of affordable housing and gentrification in your district?
You know what? It's a good question. I'm actually I actually had a conversation with the same group. So it was a home building meeting that I was at, and that's the reason why I'm able to talk about this so candidly with you. As I mentioned before, I believe in what the mayor said, that it's a responsibility for all districts, right, to have affordable housing. I'm all for it, right? Because it it helps to create a true neighborhood and a melting pot within each district. However, I would say the way that I would like to go about doing that is education. So working with the property builders, the property owners of affordable homes, right, to say, hey, you need to have something available to teach them, right? To teach your residents about either home ownership or or whatever aspect that we deem right as a unit that needs to be done, and that should be across all districts, not just mine. We need to make sure that the affordable prices that they make sense, right? You can't say that, oh, I want this apartment to be $1,200, but as long as you can come up with 700, then it's considered affordable. But we haven't really done the needs assessments, the analysis, the financial analysis of all of that. We're just putting something down. And once again, it's not equitable, right? So making sure that we educate, that we're fair with it, but also the other pieces that we're working with companies that are holding themselves accountable, but also holding those residents accountable. And the reason I say that because what happens typically is when you think of affordable housing, it's so negative. And I'll be honest, I felt guilty of that in earlier years. That you have people that don't take care of their homes, they bust their walls through, they don't care because they're getting a certain amount of funding, and when they leave, it's done. However, what you see in reality is that there are a lot of residents that are actually trying to get out of that situation, and this is helping them jumpstart. But they just need help. They need to understand what it's like to in the transition process, what it's like to be responsible. There are so many different rabbit holes that we can go down because of the negative stigma that affordable housing, that people have associated with affordable housing. It's not as bad as it seems when you actually understand what goes into affordable housing. I actually had a 3-hour conversation with a developer to better understand and educate myself on that. And I was enlightened, like, oh, okay, wow, okay, I didn't know that. So with that, it's just making sure that that we are addressing the issue head on. 2, we're educating the residents and the property owners and builders. And really 3, it really comes down to it's a community involvement. We have to have the community want to help and want to step in. And that's going to be something that's not done overnight either. It's going to take a little bit of time for that. But I think with the right representation, with the right understanding, and with the correct knowledge that's being, giving out the correct information and the knowledge, I think we can start to transition into a better light when it comes to affordable housing. And with gentrification, really, it comes down to, yeah, that's a whole nother just discussion. Whoa. But just to answer it, I'm not for that, right? I'm for a melting pot society. I'm for everyone. You should be able to live where you want to live if you can afford it. And let's be honest, if you can afford it, live within your means, but at the same time, being able to say, okay, I might not be able to live in that neighborhood right now, but I can. I'm not at a disadvantage where I cannot live there if I do what I need to do to get there. Versus, oh, I can never live there because they don't want me there, or because now they're raising rates, or whatever they want to do to keep us out. Yeah, we can't do that. So, like I said, it's going to be conversation, and then another one, last one, is going to be zoning. Zoning is the big one because when you start playing with the zoning of the zoning codes, zoning locations, that's where it gets on the surface. It might look good, but when you start to peel back those layers, you're like, something's not equitable here, or something's not quite right. And we just need to make sure that we as council people are addressing that and not being afraid to.
Well, see, what you're saying is, I know is, you're painting the perfect picture because, what you're saying is what you see and so forth. But what starts to happen is when cities getting to this point where they start pricing people out. So all of a sudden, it's slowly but surely with the process that may have started like 5, 6 years ago. So as it
Mhm.
slides down that pipe, then all of a sudden it pops up, and you start seeing things that are totally different in areas that have been together for so long that it's like we're going to take that land. So when they start this pricing point, they start first with we're going to raise taxes. So when you
Yeah.
raise the taxes and knowing that it's always been an affordable area for people with the houses that they have, So if you're raising the taxes, but the income is not going up, they can't possibly afford that.
Exactly.
And so what that means is you start seeing these larger houses going in, and these people are moving out because they've been priced out. That's
Exactly.
how gentrification works.
Yeah.
And so, for like where I am, I've seen that an enormous amount of times,
Mhm.
and it's still happening, and it's really horrible
It is.
because when you have traditional neighborhoods that's been there for over 50, 60, 70 years,
Yep.
and all of a sudden the faces have changed, and now all of a sudden there's new resources there that you've always asked for but you never got. And so now it becomes this new beautification project.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
once it becomes a beautification project, and people that know what this area was or who lived there start to ask the question, well, wait a minute, what happened? Taxes. And it's happening all around the country. In some places, it may be slower than others, but I'm sure that when you have people that are living in prime areas, and a lot of
Mhm.
those supposedly quote unquote um, uh, lower areas, neighborhoods as they call them,
Mhm.
that's prime property. And believe me, when the eye is on prime property, it's gonna happen.
Right.
Which
Exactly.
means that this is where in certain said situations, this is where maybe your people will be keeping their eye out, and they may be calling you saying,
Yeah.
hey, this is about to happen, or this is what I'm hearing is going on.
Yeah.
So in a said situation like that, because I know that's going to be pretty rough, let's just say if
Mhm.
something like that happens in your area, like how would you plan to handle something like that?
You know what? That's a good question. I would say right now I don't know, because it's not the reality, and I'm not faced with it. I can, I can hypothetically say things, but once again, I think once all of the information comes out about what's going on, then it might change how I address it, because one, if there's laws in place, right? If there's certain statutes that are outside of the ordinances that we've created as a metro versus a state, state law, state legislation. So there's multiple levels to kind of peel that back and really understand how to address it. But I would say initially, my initial gut feeling would be whatever I do, I want to make sure that it is fair at the end of the day. I know that a lot, not, well, I won't say a lot, but I know there's going to be some policies, some ordinances, some things that come down the pipe that's not going to be popular. And my vote is not going to be welcomed on it, because the party might expect me to vote a certain way, but my constituents might want me to vote another way. I think it's the same way in how we handle that, because the way that I would handle that in District 22, I can almost guarantee is going to be different than how the representative or the council person for District 1 will handle it when they're inside the city, right? Because there's just different nuances that go into effect. But I want to make sure that my constituents know and understand that I want to be as fair as possible. And with that, I challenge them and charge them to hold me accountable, because everything that I'm saying here, I never want them to say, well, on, Mr. King's podcast, you said this and here's what you're doing. Hold me accountable, because I'm human as well, and I will make mistakes. I'm not going to, I'm not perfect. I will make mistakes. It will happen.
Right.
But that's where we have that conversation, and we have that transparency that we talked about, that will allow me to take a step back and say, okay, you know what, Rashawn, did you handle that the way you should have? Could you have done it differently? Or prior to doing something, what are my options? If I do option A, this is going to upset this group. I do option B, is going to upset this group. If I do option C, it's probably the lesser of all three evils, so I might have to go that way. But as long as I can sleep well at night with the decision, that it was fair, equitable, it made sense. it didn't deviate from my platform or what my constituents expect from me, then I would say I will be okay. But at the end of the day, I can already tell you I'm going to have some hot, angry, upset residents, and that's fine. We will address those as they, as they come. I know that was a long answer, but I don't know how to even hypothetically answer that, saying that I would do X, Y, Z. But I will say whatever it will be fair. At the end of the day.
What initiatives do you have in mind to support small businesses and economic development in your community?
Absolutely. I would love to see if there's a way that we can incentivize, small businesses in growing. And what I mean by that is, I'll look at, states like New York, how if you are headquartered there for 10 years, you don't have taxes, right? All of that sounds great. I think tax incentives go a long way, but I think those are still temporary in nature, because after that time period ends, then what happens? Because if you wasn't planning for taxes because of 10 years, 15 years, whatever the time is, now that you have it, will that bankrupt you? Because you might not have, you might have had some bad years you couldn't save for it, right? So I want to make sure that whatever we do, that they are incentivized, right? I want to make sure that maybe that they're guaranteed, their location. Competition, that's what America's built on, right? We are a competitive, nature, right? So, and I'll say that because we had a new chain of a grocery store that came in one area right across the street, a current chain built, and they have a chain about a mile up the street from where they built at because of the competition. But I want to make sure that we can make it um, as um, as exciting and incentivize them as much as possible to where they can thrive as a small business. It's funny, if you drive down our main street, there's two coffee shops that are right next to each other, and they're both independently owned. Right? They're not a chain, but across the street there's a chain coffee shop. So with that, I'm okay with that. You have to understand, your niche. You have to understand your market. You have to understand your customers. But at the end of the day, I want to congratulate you for being a business owner and willing to build or establish yourself in this district. So I will definitely be there to support grand openings if my schedule allows me to. I would definitely be able to, help with any type of incentives, if it's tax incentives, if it's helping to maybe we cover a portion of your cost for a certain amount of time. I don't know what my limits are with that, because that's a good question. But I want to make sure that as long as I'm working within the limits that have been established, I want to make sure that that small business owner knows that they have representation as well. Even though the residents have it, you have it as well, because I represent you too.
So, would those small businesses that want to come into your district to open businesses, would you make it a demand that they stay within the community, that they hire people from that community?
You know what? I would say this. I would. Here's where the demand becomes troublesome. If you have a small business that comes into my community, my district, and let's say um, they're paying a certain wage, right? And if I demand them to only hire in my district, but my district doesn't want to work there, then it's kind of, how do we really support that business, right? Of course, I want to make sure that if you're in the district, that the residents are able to benefit from you in the district, whether they're employees, whether they are consumers, whether they're investors. I want all of that to, of course, stay in the district. But realistically, if you are the only one of your kind, small business of your kind in the city of Louisville, then I don't think it's fair to limit it to my district, saying you can only serve and only work, have people work that's in my district. But I think there should be some type of priority given, because guess what? They're here, they're close, they're accessible. As long as they meet, the requirements to do that job. So that's a good question. I know that's not a popular answer, because everybody wants to say, "Oh yes, district," but the reality is, um, I don't work in my district because I'm headquartered downtown Louisville, right? At Humana. So I don't work in my district. I work from home, but I don't work in my district where that business is. So I don't want to limit it that way because you could be potentially cutting off great talent that come from a different district and they can't work in that district because it's oversaturated or whatever the case may be. Or it might be I really want to work for this company because they're here and they're only in your district. So I want to work for them. So yeah, I'm going to work there. So I think it's one of those things. Prioritize maybe, understand where they live. But at the same time, keep it open for everyone to still, win.
I think I phrased that wrong and I used the wrong word in demand. But
Okay.
basically, I'm saying that, they are going to hire people from the community. That was
Yes, absolutely. 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 Yes. Yes. Yes.
so
Yes.
that was a bad question on my part.
That's okay. Hey,
Okay. So
it's okay. I appreciate the question though, because I think it was still a good question because some people actually think like, well, if you come in my district, then you can only hire people in my district, and that's the wrong mindset because you could be penalizing that organization, that small business, and you could be penalizing other residents in the community that's not necessarily in the district from being able to thrive as well. So I think it was still an appropriate question, but I'm glad you followed it up. But that's the second part of it. Absolutely, yes, hands down.
okay. Um, how will you advocate for better educational opportunities and resources for all residents?
One thing I would say is going to be making sure that the residents know about those resources. You'll be surprised because even me, when I moved into this district, I didn't know all the resources until I started getting, communication from my current council person and then just talking in the community. So one thing is making sure that the residents know. The easiest way is going to be, email communication, making sure that they know that way. But of course, if someone's not on the email, right, then it might be one of those that a mailer might have to go out every so often just to, say, hey, these are the resources. Here's what it looks like. And then also bringing that information part of the regular district meetings that I will be having those resources available, right? So whether it's financial literacy, whether it's educational, whether it's adult ed, right? How do I get my diploma because I didn't graduate high school? You'll be surprised at how many of those residents are in my district. And people wouldn't think because of the district I live in, they wouldn't think that. But making sure that they understand that resources are out there and they're available to you and they're accessible, and here they are. So I think part of that falls back on me as the council person to make sure that I educate and make it available, but also falls back on me to make sure that I know the resources that's out there as well and how they can and how my community can benefit from them.
Okay. And this is another follow up question, but it's a little bit more in depth because we talked about this earlier.
Okay.
How do you plan to address public safety concerns and build trust between law enforcement and the community?
That's a great question. Um, Law enforcement needs to ensure that they are in the community, and what I mean by that is we need to partner and host different things like call I'll make something up, but coffee with the cops, right? Where they go to, and at this point, this is where we can prioritize, right? Small business, have them there, and then as you come in, we can have a session where it gives a forum for law enforcement to give updates on the community, the district, the crime that's going on, what the number one crime is, and how, and taking preventative measures for minimizing or deterring that crime to occur. Another piece of it would be they need to be community policing. That is get out your car. It's okay to walk your neighborhood and engage, with them. And some of them do that, right? So I don't want to say Louisville doesn't do that, but I would say that that is something that can be more evident in neighborhoods, and I think will gain that trust. And then two, oh, I'm sorry, three is going to be um, they have to understand they're dealing with residents that either don't trust them because of previous experiences, traumatic experiences, maybe not with them directly, but indirectly. They don't trust them because of what the media has put out there. So, really making sure that they are addressing or approaching residents with that type of understanding. But at the same time, it works both ways. Residents have to understand that they are officers. They're not above the law, but they have to enforce it. So if you're doing wrong, you can't be mad for them doing their job. And I think there's just ways that they go about doing it. So the more that they're in the community, like for example, in my neighborhood, one of the LMPD officers actually live, they're a resident in my neighborhood. And as I'm either walking my dog or as I'm driving past, when I see them, I'll wave, I might speak to them. That's how you build that relationship. Right there is having the conversation because now you're putting a human element to the job, right? It's not just robotic and oh, you're blue, so you don't care about me. There's more to it, but at the same time, it goes back to holding officers accountable as well. So the leadership within LMPD that needs to be publicized so people understand and like, okay, we get it. They messed up. You hold them accountable. They could have done XYZ, but it's really just making sure that that there is an understanding on both sides, and really it's just talking. But I will definitely provide the opportunity, the outlet for the community to come out to meet with them, but it's going to take both sides to really have that conversation. And how do we bridge this gap out here? How do we bridge it? How do we move forward? How do we build the trust relationship? And we can get back to what it once was, many years ago. I think initially when policing, when you could look up and say, I want to be a police officer when I was younger. Now, it's kind of hard to say that at times because of media and what has taken place.
Yeah. So, um, let me just go on to this next question here. What role do you see technology playing in improving government services and communications with your constituents?
Technology, we're not getting away from it. It's not going anywhere. I would say technology can be very beneficial if it's used right, and if it's used in a proactive manner. The reason I say that is because, um, like I said, all the public council meetings are recorded, right? That's technology. People have access to it. But I think what would take it a step further is if we automate that to go out to people that registered for newsletters. It's like, hey, this was the council in case you missed it, click on here. And and then maybe there's some follow-up questions. There's some place where they can write and submit questions or clarifications in. I think technology as well. I think AI is going to be challenging within because there's different dynamics within government itself that I don't think AI will fit seamlessly. I think eventually, as it gets smarter, it can. But I think it's still in the beginning stages of that when it comes to government and how that would work. I would say that leveraging community mass text messaging, right? I mean, if there's something specific to District 22, my team should be able to send something out, just like they do those, alerts, those, golden alerts and things like that. We should be able to leverage technology to send that out. So if there is, let's say, a closure for one of the main roadways in my district, yes, people can get it through the news. You might get it when you go to your navigation app, and it might give you a different direction. But to be more proactive, I think sending something out that says, "Hey, this is what's going on. Avoid this area," or you might want to look at a different route, just to help communicate more and get more information. I think that's how technology can be used and how I would like to use it in my district.
Okay. How will you balance the interests of different stakeholders in decision making processes?
I think it's going to be I think I might go gray with that one. I think because sorry, my dogs are. I think my dogs are seeing somebody. Anyway, with that, I would say the best way of dealing with that is maybe having a forum, right? So that's why I said I want to be proactive in anything that comes out or that I know is going to be um, that could be contentious, that could be problematic in scope, making sure that I can hold a forum or some type of, whether it's virtual or in person, for people to give their input on, just so that I can make sure that I am not tunnel vision and I'm going off of self and I'm actually taking into account everyone or majority of people's concerns, questions, inputs before a decision is made, because at the end of the day I want to be able to stand proud and say I made this decision because that's what the district wanted. The problem is getting the district involved to want to communicate, because I can have one person that would give me their opinion, and I don't want them to be the one that speaks for the district, right? So I want to make sure that we have a collective unit, because I mean, you'll be surprised. I have my cell phone, and I have one or two people religiously that will let me know what's going on before I even know, and that's what I want. I want constituents like that. That's like, hey, I know you don't live over here, but just so you know, they're doing X, Y, Z. Heads up. But I would love to get that from, and of course, I'm probably going to open up Pandora's box when I say this, but I would like to get that from the district and figure out a way to filter it and understand it. But I would like to get that, so I might have to use technology to do send out a Google Doc or something and be like, hey, what's your thought on here? And then we can see it in real time, and my team and I can then formulate a response and how we address that. So it's just really comes back to, once again, communication, education, and conversation.
Okay. What is your stance on environmental sustainability and addressing climate change at the local level?
So I believe in climate change. Anyone that doesn't, I'm still waiting on them to give me a rationale behind why it's not real. Because from what I can see and understand, that it is. I would say we definitely need to look at greener energy. We definitely need to look at how do we reduce the carbon footprint. I know that that's kind of like the big thing that a lot of like your transportation industry uses, reducing the carbon footprint, but it's a real thing, right? The one thing I would say is we're having a library built in the district, and I went to that meeting, and they're putting greenery up on top of the library, so that when it rains and things like that, like a lot of that can be recycled um, materials, right? So the rainwater can come in and they can do stuff with it. The sunlight, right, can come in, and solar panels and things like that. I mean, I have solar panels on my house, right? So it's reducing, trying to figure out how to reduce the carbon, footprint, but how to go green. And really incentivizing people for doing that, right? I mean, my bank up the street, their entire roof is solar panel. I get it. And then when I went in to ask them about, hey, so what's your, how much have you saved? They don't pay energy because they get it all, and then rest of it is, it goes out. So I think when we talk about, the energy aspect of it, it goes to the education. And a lot of the questions that you ask, I keep coming back to education, because I think that's what a lot of individuals are lacking from their council person is education. They get as much as they see on social media, and celebrities saying one thing, or influencers, should I say, that saying one thing, and then they go with that, but they don't really understand what's really going on at the local level, because what's happening in Detroit, for example, doesn't apply to Louisville in a sense, right? So we want to make sure that we are speaking apples to apples, but they're educated on what um, what that looks like, and then being able to move forward. And I would even say possibly, and some builders might get mad about this, but possibly as we start creating new constructions, that's part of the build is solar panels or alternate ways of reducing that footprint as you're building new neighborhoods or new buildings, new structures.
So let me ask you this. This is a follow-up question to that because your state is one is one of those states that's really, really special. We ain't gonna go in, we're not gonna be too in depth. Okay.
Okay.
Tell me about that coal. What's going on with that coal?
So here's the thing with the coal. And I'm actually going to take something. I was at another forum, and I actually enjoyed what the candidate said there, and it makes sense. Coal, we can eventually leverage the skill sets that those individuals that are working in the coal miners, right? Being able to leverage those skill sets for renewable energy, right? It's the same thing. So if they can go in and extract the coal and do what they do in that process and create energy and do that, they can do the same thing with either solar panels or whatever renewable energy that we want to take here. I think what happens with Kentucky um, is that Kentucky has been so rich when it comes to coal, tobacco, certain resources that is here that they don't want to give it up or they don't want to change or alter because the fear that it would be a negative impact on the economy, the state, whatever the case may be, right? However, I think once again, when you have the proper leadership in there, you can see how um, you can leverage those skill sets and even leverage certain things and transition it or transfer. It's transferable to where we can still be on the cusp of greatness, um, but you have some leaders that have been in office for so long that they don't think outside the box or is tied up with money, right? Let's just be honest. So
19th century.
yeah, and so with that, it's kind of the idea of Blockbuster, right? Blockbuster, Netflix went to Blockbuster. Blockbuster turned them away, and this is the story that I'm getting, and I need to do more research on that. But in hindsight, turn them away. Now Netflix is where it's at, and Blockbuster is nowhere to be found. I think there's one left in the U.S. I think, but anyway, I digress. With saying that, if you don't have the right leadership that can have that intuitive, that forward thinking, looking, beyond what's in front of them to see the future and getting on board on that, I think that's where you start finding yourself getting left behind, and you start finding it being more difficult to transition when the time finally comes, right? So you're right. My state is unique. I mean, my state is unique that we have that we are a red state, but we have a Democratic governor, right? I mean, Kentucky is unique itself, but you know, hey,
Yep. So yeah, just I was just thinking, for those that still with that's thinking on that 19th century plane, I mean, they're the ones that's keeping the world behind, but also they are the ones that are trying to keep progressiveness from taking place. Um
well, I mean,
so
if you look at it, it's ironic, and this is not just Kentucky, right? I mean, this is the U.S. as a whole,
yeah,
because if you look at how we compare to different countries, just in literacy, in math, reading, in child mortality. I mean, if you look at
healthcare.
just healthcare. If you look at just the span of how we rank with our counterparts, it's almost embarrassing in a sense of being the greatest country or looked at visualized as the greatest country in the world because of the freedoms we have, but yet we're not backing that up with staying progressive enough to be competitive with our neighboring countries. So it's a catch-22 because yes, while America is great, and trust me, I'm not speaking ill of my country, but the reality is you have to address the elephant in the room sometimes, and sometimes it's uncomfortable. And for us to be who we are, and we're last in a lot of things or close to last, there's a disconnect somewhere.
Mhm.
And to your point, I think, like you said, the ones of the 19th century thinkers, they don't want to let go. They don't want to pass the baton on. Um, they're the ones I think is going to be detrimental to our economy, to the U.S. just overall. And I think it's time for some people. Guess what? You've done it. Thank you for getting us to this point. Retire and relax and
Mhm.
enjoy the rest of life that you have, left. But yeah, so I'll digress.
So we have that I'm about to ask you a question that is very touchy around this country right now. And
Okay.
you know, at this point, when the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action,
Woo, yeah.
and now the Supreme Court is helping all of these states now. They're about to pass this thing where now they're now about to take away diversity, equity, and inclusion. How do you plan to promote inclusivity and diversity within the Metro Council and the community?
So here's the thing. Um, they can take away the post of DEIB, right? They can do all that, but really, inclusivity comes from um, me still demanding that I have a voice. I'm still here. Yes, diversity, was, great. People would say, oh, well, you got the job over somebody else that was equally qualified. But you know what? Let's take all that out. At the end of the day, um, I work myself crazy to be the best person I can be. I work myself crazy to make sure that one, you understand that there's a voice. That's the reason I have a doctorate. It's not that I didn't want one, but at the same time, when I come into a space, I need people to understand who I am and whose I am. So the same mentality will be taken on Metro Council. Okay. Um, Metro Council itself, if you actually look at the council makeup, um, the um, the majority of the districts where you have predominantly African American or people of color in, um, they're led by those council people that share the same identity, right?
Mhm.
We have 26 districts, so your first six districts, I believe, are the ones that usually have African American or people of color as council people, right? That is not all the way the same election over election, but in a general scheme, that's what it is. Out of 26. So therefore, I need you to understand that as I'm coming in as a minority on the council, in some aspects, I still have a voice. I need you to understand that voice. So one way is the relationship. Two is not wavering from my voice because I need people to understand that I am here. I'm not just, somebody that was elected and I'm a figurehead and I have no power because I do. But I need them to also understand that for us to move forward progressively, you have to have an understanding, acknowledgement that there needs to be diversity and inclusion, belonging, equity in everything that we do. Because the moment that we misstep on that, we are now going back 50 years. And so to avoid that, or to avoid that, we need to make sure that we have those champions, those supporters that's not afraid to voice concerns in support of DEIB, but also we need the allies that are not afraid to say, you know what, I see it. Even though I might not, um, and they can't say they don't benefit from, because you do benefit from it. Everybody benefits from diversity and inclusion, because you get a different perspective. If you look at a lot of the things that have great things that have been done in America, if it wasn't for DEI, some of it would not have came to fruition the way it has. So with that, it's just making sure that, like I said, I'm not going to be one that just sits down and take it. You know, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not going to be one just to be like, okay, and sit back and like, okay, just let them beat me up. No, we're going to have conversations. Some of them are going to be uncomfortable. I already know that. I'll have some uncomfortable conversations with people that look like me. That's on the council. That's okay. That's okay. But at the end of the day, I think if we could understand the importance of it, regardless of what Supreme Court does, because it's not illegal, even if they take it away, for us to still work in a mindset of diversity and inclusion. It's not illegal because it's still under the First Amendment rights. But we just need to make sure that we're not losing that because they shut it down and say, oh, we're not doing it. Yeah, well, that's a very touchy. Yeah, you're right. That was a touchy subject. That was a good one though.
Yeah, so, what messages do you have for young people and minorities who aspire to run for public office?
Do it. That's the first thing. Do it. Here's one thing I say. If if you are complaining about something and you haven't exercised your right to vote, you don't have a right to complain. Or you can complain as you want to, but more than likely, I probably won't hear it because you didn't exercise the right. Now, people that want to say, "Oh, well, my vote doesn't count," well, this, well, for sure, if you don't vote, your vote doesn't count. So let's go ahead and get that stigma out the way. First off. Two, if you want to run for office, I would say this: do it, but understand your why for running. Because I think far too many times we have elected officials that forgot their why initially, and they're just there because their name is on the ballot. They know they're going to get elected. No one's really, challenging them, or if they are challenging, there's just areas around there that kind of get me heated. But if you want to run, know your why or why you're running, first off. The second thing is understand who you're supporting when you're running, because running for Metro Council, alderman, city government, you have a whole different constituent that you're supporting running for the state legislation than you do if you're running for US, right? So understand who you're supporting and why. And then at the end, be ready to work. At the end of the day, you're signing up to work for a term. And if you aren't willing to do that, then don't even go down that rabbit hole, because it's not the glam, which now I know it's not the glam that, oh, I can call myself, counsel. That, okay, guess what? You can call me doctor as well. But at the end of the day, I'm still Rashawn. Um, I want to make sure that people understand that, one, we need more minorities to run. Two, we need more African American men to run. And three, we need to make sure that we have an alliance with the people that we're running with. Now, I'm not saying, the saying all skin folk ain't kinfolk. That's true. But make sure that if we're all running and we support the same thing, that we're rallying behind each other and we're supporting each other, and we're not trying to chop off each other's neck to get to the top. That's the one thing within the community I just need people to understand, is that it's not always about you. At the end of the day, it's probably never about you. It's about the betterment of us as a whole. And so if you can get that in your mind, that it's about the big picture, then I think we will have one, a better turnout when it comes to voting, have a better turnout when it comes to people running. I think we'll have an overall better government for that. But we have to just get on one accord and the same, page. So I would say, yeah, those things. Just make sure that they educate themselves, they know why they're running, and that they're doing it for the right reasons.
And finally, how can our listeners support your campaign and get involved in creating positive change in Kentucky?
Absolutely. So that's the favorite question. You can actually go to my website, which is electcrawley.com, ELECT Crawley, CRAWLEY.com. And on that website, you will actually see some buttons where if you are in Louisville or Kentucky, or you're visiting and you want to volunteer, you can, give your time that way. If you want to contribute your treasures, because it does cost to run a campaign, there is a way that you can contribute on that website as well. And then, if you want to endorse me, you can, do an endorsement on the website as well, and that'll be great. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to like-minded individuals serving the community at large. What I want is a team of people that are um, real and honest about supporting the vision that I have for District 22. I'm not looking for people just to be there, just say, "Hey, I'm there," but they understand how important this election and this changeover will be for the district and for Louisville Metro. And then the other piece of it is that my information is on there too. So they can email me. They have questions, additional, they want to support maybe in a different way. If they, want to host or a fundraiser, everything that they want to do, they can reach me at electcrawley.com. I have my cell phone is on there, so they will reach me. Um, Not anybody else. I have my cell phone with me right now, so they'll reach me, and then we can have that dialogue. But I would ask any and all support is welcome. When people talk about financial contributions, any amount is welcome. There is a limit, and all that is listed on what you can give, but any amount is welcome, and none will be turned away. Trust me. Trust me, I'll take whatever I can get. But I would love to have the support and the help of individuals. And this is the last thing I'll say. Even if you do not live in Kentucky, Louisville, the Midwest, um, and you want to support, I welcome that. But if you do not live here, but you know people that do live here, share this, reach out to them, and have them get involved and get engaged. And if they need to talk to me, have them call me. I can, I'll definitely have that conversation. But I try to attend all community events that my schedule allows me to. I try to be visible. And yeah, I'm accessible. So yeah.
Well, with that being said, Dr. Crawley, and when is the election?
So the primary is May 21st. I do not have a primary, so I will not even be on the ballot at all for this election. However, I will be on for the general election, and that is November 5th. That's the national date. And then I will be on the ballot there. So we have some time, but this time is going to go quick. I can already tell you it's going to go fast. But I'm glad that I can kind of relax a little bit in May, but I'm still full steam ahead moving forward. So yeah, so May 21st for those that might not be in my district that are still in Louisville that want to vote. May 21st is the primary, so get out and vote. And then of course November 5th is the general election, and get out and vote there.
Okay. So with that being said, I definitely would love to have you back before the election.
Absolutely.
That's fine with you if that's something we could schedule because
Yes, sir.
I think there will be another time that with you having this wonderful interview, that your constituents would definitely love to get that final boost going into the
Right.
poll.
Absolutely. And I welcome it. So thank you, Mr. King. I truly appreciate you allowing this forum for me to come on. I will say that you are the first to have a virtual forum that I've accepted, and I love the platform. So thank you so much. But yes, I would definitely take you up on that offer and come back. Absolutely.
Yes, sir. I definitely appreciate it. And I want to thank you, Dr. Crawley, for sharing your insights and your vision with us today. and we wish you the best of luck for your campaign for Metro Council. And our listeners, I want you all to stay tuned for more episodes of America in Black and White. And remember, those in the Louisville area, make sure that you vote. Your vote counts. Go vote.
Absolutely.
Please
Absolutely.
vote.
Please vote. Definitely.
Yes,
We need it. Yes.
yes, sir. And thank you all for a wonderful episode. And we will see